Welcome to another episode of Victoria's Lounge from Sankara Hotel. Now, according to the World Health Organization, prematurity is the leading cause of death among children under the age of 5. In Kenya, roughly 193,000 children are born prematurely every year. And that is why we're having that discussion today. In fact, tomorrow is World Prematurity Day, and we want to raise awareness. We have some parents who are here to share their experiences, and hopefully you draw some information, inspiration, and encouragement. Let's meet them now. Ruby Kimondo is the founder of Preemie Love that reaches out to parents of premature infants and raises awareness. That has been Ruby's passion for the last 2 years after the mother of 4 went through 3 premature births. Richard Odera is a program manager in the hospitality industry. He is married and blessed with a beautiful miracle daughter called Janelle Malaika Odera. She was born a preterm baby at 25 weeks, weighing just 700 grams. Hear how his family is faring on a year and a half after. Mukami Mwaura is the wife to nominated Senator Isaac Mwaura. In January this year, she delivered triplets at 28 weeks. Unfortunately, 2 succumbed to complications after their premature births. Mukami now runs a blog called mukamispeaks.co.ke, which talks about her journey of loss and caring for a preterm baby. Rachel Mahinda is a mother of 2 with special needs. Her second-born came into the world prematurely at 28 weeks, weighing 1.5 kilograms. 3 years on, he is a growing boy, now undergoing occupational therapy. Carol Naserian is a mother of 2 whose second-born came prematurely at 25 weeks. A working mother, Carol admits after the experience, it's been tough to balance the career and preemie care needs. Remember, hashtag Victoria's Lounge is how you can chime into the conversation on social media. Remember, you're our extended audience. We always love to hear from you. And today, of course, the subject is no easier than what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks here on the show, talking about prematurity. Ruby, let me begin with you because you've been very proactive in reaching out to mothers who've been going through the same thing that you did. 3 times over, literally, 3 of your children were preemies. But take us through your journey and what it was like.
I get a condition called preeclampsia in pregnancy. Up until 25, 26 weeks of my pregnancy, I'm fine. Then at about 26, 27 weeks is when I start getting the obvious signs, I think. And in my case, the most obvious sign is weight gain. I just get very big suddenly. My feet swell. So if I can go back to my first pregnancy, I was 26. I was busy. I was working, traveling to Dar es Salaam by bus. So the whole day I'm in the bus. And my feet would swell so much. But because I'd grown up seeing pregnant women with swollen feet, it wasn't much of a concern. It became a concern one day when I was in the office, and not only were my feet swollen, but my face was puffed up, my hands were swollen, and it was 15 years ago, but at least we still had Google. So I Googled swollen hands, feet, face in pregnancy, and that's when, for the very first time, I got to learn about preeclampsia. Yeah, so I didn't like what I read. I quickly left the office and I told my colleague I'll be back in a few minutes. Let me just go get myself checked. And that was the last time I was in the office for a very long time, because I went and my blood pressure was high, quite high. And they did some more tests, urine tests. There was a lot of protein in my urine. And that's when they told me about preeclampsia. So I was admitted and put on bed rest. So I had a hospital stay of about 3 weeks in hospital, just being monitored, running various tests. You're seen by different doctors. There was apart from my doctor, there was a physician who was also seeing me. But then they tell you, I think we may have to deliver the baby early. I was 26 weeks. So we'll try, keep you rested for as long as we can, monitor the pressure. inject you with the injections just to mature the baby's lungs. But at one point, when we can't go any further, we'll have to deliver the baby. After my baby was born, maybe I stayed a day without seeing him because I was still in bed. So the first time I went to see him was it was pretty emotional because nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. He was 1 kilo. 1 kilo and looking like he's really struggling to breathe. You know, the way the chest heaves in and out. You feel like you want to breathe for your baby. And that first day I saw my baby, I broke down and I cried. I really cried. I cried. And the nurse was there. She told me, Mom, no, we don't cry here. We do not cry in front of our babies. We are strong for our babies. It was a traumatic experience. She was clueless, I think, about what I had just gone through, and she sent me out. And it didn't become easy, but I coped. You cope. Yeah, you cope. So, yeah.
Carol, take us through your experience because you had what's known as a micro preemie.
On this particular day, I had left work and I was driving home, and I could feel, I didn't know whether I'm feeling labor pains because I'm 6 months pregnant. I'm 25 weeks. So I couldn't be having labor pains, so it could probably be false labor, as other mothers might know about false labor. The pain became intense and I actually couldn't drive, and I had to call my colleague that I'm in between home and work and I can't drive, but I don't know what the pain is. So they came, got me to a hospital. I was like, anyway, I've already booked my hospital, but I couldn't be giving birth, but just take me there. I called my husband and gave him the same information. We got to hospital, they did their checks, and I could see the panic from the medical team, but I'm wondering why they're panicking, and you know, I think I can still feel my baby playing. They admitted me, they did quite a number of scans, they admitted me and they were like, now you need to be on bed rest. I'm like, can't I go home and then, you know, get ready and come? They're like, no, because you've lost a lot of your amniotic fluid. And they called the specialists and they came, spoke to me, and they're like, now you need to be on absolute bed rest because we need to save whatever amniotic fluid you have so that we can save the baby. So I was in the hospital, and for about 4 days this was controlled. Then the pains came back and the doctor came, spoke to me, and they're like, it seems you're having labor again. And we need to make sure we stop the birth of this baby because at 25 weeks, it's not a good thing. I listened, I cooperated with everything they told me. They kept giving me medication to stop the labor, but it just wouldn't go. And eventually one of the doctors came and told me, at 25 weeks, if we deliver this baby here, we can't manage. So as a family, you have to make a decision. You need to go to a hospital where they have neonatal care. New language to me. So we made a decision, and I got a transfer. Pregnant in an ambulance, and I'm like, is it this serious? You know, fighting traffic because they're like, we need to get you to the, you know, to the best place possible. So it happened. I found myself in in another hospital, which we chose because I had delivered my firstborn baby there. And when I got there, the doctors there also were like, we don't want to deliver this baby. We want to keep the baby longer in your stomach. But the body, of course, said no. So I was in labor. This is day 2 of labor. Eventually, my baby came. And the panic mode was, it's like what I've watched in ER. And they kept using the word NICU, that you need to take this baby to NICU. And I thought NICU was the best pediatrician they had. Little did I know that NICU was neonatal ICU. So I delivered my baby. Of course, I told my husband that I had delivered. Then I went to rest until the next morning. And he came, and the doctors, they're coming to talk to me, and I'm like, wow, this baby of mine must be very special, you know? The only thing I still vividly remember is that they would cover my baby with cotton wool because of their small size. They would not load with like fabric. They'd use pieces of cotton wool in that incubator to try and keep them extra warm. But he kept fighting. The first 2 days, 1.5 days, he would breathe on his own at that weight. Then, of course, realized that, of course, I'm out of mommy's womb and I need to breathe. I need some assistance to breathe. And from there, it was story after story. My baby had kidney issues. He couldn't produce platelets by his own. He had breathing issues. He had a hole in the heart. Then we had to use oxygen for a very long time, so we were on long oxygen dependence. And because of that and the low birth weight, he developed what you call retinopathy of prematurity, which affects the eyes and actually leads to loss of eyesight, to loss of vision. The doctor kept telling me, I need only one thing from you, faith and milk, because when these babies are born at that age, the mother's milk plays a very big role. Then after 1.5 months, it dawned on us that, we need finances, because now we started getting the itemized bills, and you're like, whose bill is this? And you're like, it can't be ours. Of course, you speak to the insurance and they tell you, we're sorry, we'd want to assist, but prematurity is not covered. If you give birth below 37 weeks, most of the insurance companies in this country will not consider that human. So, they'll turn you away. It's not because of their wish, because I guess it's because of the high cost of medical care, because the medical care needed in these cases is very intensive and very costly as well. However, we didn't give up. We're like, money comes, money goes. We're like, the best thing is for baby to survive. So we kept encouraging the baby. Would talk to him, and the nurses would tell me, speak to this guy, he can hear. They're like, boys, one thing I also learned is that the male generation does not fight born that early, but it works. We fought, he fought the bigger fight. Eventually, we were discharged after about 3.5 months. And we had managed to take care of most of the complications. But as you said, there's now the care after you leave the hospital, because there are no nurses, there are no machines. Right. And here is this very fragile baby.
And we'll certainly get to that in the next part of the show. But I mean, for the people listening, from Ruby and Carol, your stories of the health complications that come with, and then the bills, that really takes a toll on your pocket. And then, of course, on you emotionally as a parent. And, of course, we'll hear from the rest of the parents. Let's take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. The conversation continues. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. Let's get to the rest of our parents just to get a sense of what their experiences were like. Rachel, you're looking lovely, I must say, in that dress. But take us through your experience and, delivering your child.
At 28 weeks, I was supposed to be getting an anti-D injection because my rhesus factor is O negative. So what happens is that my husband is O positive, so your body might reject the baby. It also plays a major factor also in the pregnancy. I did not manage to get the injection, and while I was going for the scan, the nurse noticed that my placenta was in front of the baby, but she did not tell me anything. So I went. She told me to come back at 28 weeks so that I get the injection. And so I went home. When I got to work on Monday, my placenta, it ruptured. So I'm at work, I'm handing over my documents to my boss. So when I'm in the office, my blood, it started running down. So I'm like, there you see in movies, women saying that they are pin on themselves. So I'm like, let me just hold it, try to hold it. But it was blood flowing. So when my boss saw this, she screamed and ran out. I was not even looking down because I was embarrassed. I was thinking I'm pin on myself. So when she ran out, I was like, what is happening? So when I saw blood flowing, that's when she went and called other people. They rushed me to hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they did a scan to check if the baby's still there. There was a faint heartbeat, and they did a CS. The baby was delivered, and they had to rush him to a hospital because the hospital did not have the neonatal care, the NICU. So they had to transfer him to another hospital. I was left in the hospital. I had not seen my baby for the first 4 days. So I was just asking, where's my baby? And he's telling me, you just pray. The baby was delivered, but we cannot confirm, as in we cannot tell you more about it. They tried to call the other hospital. They were not giving information. They are not allowed to share information hospital to hospital. So I had to wait for 4 days for my wound to heal before I could go to the other hospital.
And how big was the baby at this point?
1.5. He was 28 weeks, 1.5. But then the weight dropped to 1.2. And he was put in ICU because the lungs had not developed. it was okay. They did not know that the baby will be born preterm, so they had not prepared my pregnancy for preterm. So he did not have the steroids injected. Okay, I did not have the steroids injected in me, and then the lungs were a bit, they were weak, so he used to breathe with difficulties. He was in the ICU for like the first 2 weeks. He was in a machine. Then they put a steroid to quicken the development of the lungs. He managed to pick up. But later on, when they were doing the checkups, they realized his head was becoming a bit bigger. So when we did a scan, it showed that he had hydrocephalus. That's accumulation of water in the brain. Yeah. For me, it was this was the most difficult part for me. I still struggle with coming to terms with how he is right now, because he's been like this for this year. It's been like 1.5 years, but I still struggle to come to terms with this. So I think, okay, for me, prematurity affected me not in the first stages majorly, but in the second, because the aftercare was like right now you have to go through therapy sessions. He has to see several doctors and a neurosurgeon, an eye doctor, the ophthalmologist, yeah, like all types of doctors for him to get back to where he is. And it's draining you financially. You have to have a special care person to look after the baby, because some of the procedures he has to be done, you cannot do them yourself. Yeah.
Let's come to you, Mukami. You had triplets. Take us through your experience.
I got admitted twice before 6 months because I was dehydrated. I could not retain anything I was eating, so I did not actually gain weight. Yeah, so the pregnancy was growing big, but I was not gaining any weight. So I was actually losing my body weight as my pregnancy was growing. So at some point, we were told by the doctor, because of the whole strain, the triplets would probably come early at around 34, 33 weeks. At 26 weeks, the doctor was okay. The babies are doing well. The weight is okay at around 900 grams. And yeah, everything is good. Then I was supposed to go back after 2 weeks to get my steroids. So I think on a Wednesday, at 28 weeks, I did a short errand, and then I went home. Then at around sometime at 9, I felt some pain. And I was in this group, and I asked the ladies, "This is my pain." And they told me it's labor, just time. So I called my husband, and he sent a driver to pick me. So getting to the hospital at around midnight, I was checked in, I was admitted, but they said they'll try to reverse the labor to kind of stop it. So by 3 a.m. I was in full labor. Like the labor pains were I was in full labor. So by 6 a.m. the doctor came in, he checked me, and I was fully dilated. But the babies couldn't come out because they were too tiny, and one was breech. So they had to take me for an emergency CS. So I went in, they delivered the babies, and they cried, all of them. So later my husband told me that they were rushed to the NICU. So they're covered in cotton wool, then the plastic bags just to keep the air, and of course they are intubated. The intubation is a pipe that goes through the mouth to the lungs to just help them to breathe. The NICU babies have different outcomes. So on the second day, they told me that my baby my triplet 2 and 3 needed transfusion. I didn't think anything would happen with the girl, although she was the smallest at 1.1. Yeah, 1.01. So at some point during the day, the nurse told me that my baby was having some difficulty. And so when they came to pick me, and they told me the doctor wants to see me, just to go there, and the baby was being resuscitated, and blood was coming out of her mouth and nose. And so 2 minutes later, they told me the baby was gone. They couldn't revive the baby. So at that point, I was just left with the two boys. Then the first boy developed complications. The second boy, who is now the surviving one, was okay. He did his intubation, then moved to CPAP, then now to breathing on oxygen alone. But then the other one kept developing issues, like he couldn't stay without life support for too long. And then they said that one of his nostrils was blocked. So at some point they would maybe do the surgery to unblock the nostril, just a minor surgery. But then he kept going in and out. So he was resuscitated more than 20 times. So on one morning I just got a call and I was told to go to hospital. And of course, we knew what they were saying. So he just, he could not hold it and he had been through too much. So we just asked him to rest, but the other one is doing well. He's strong. He's low on the milestones, but he's strong.
Mukami, you have incredible strength to even recount that story, because I can only imagine, even with your surviving son, you're also thinking about the other two and where they would have been now, and that is a story that a lot of parents who have normal births and have kids who meet all the milestones don't think about. When you have a premature baby, it's day by day. Anything can happen. And a lot of times you forget about one group, which is the dads. And we have Richard here to take us through his experience, what it was like for him. Let's take a short break here in Victoria's Lounge. We'll be right back with his story and, of course, life after raising a preemie to now become a normal child. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. We've just left a very emotional part 2 and coming into the last part of the show. And Richard, take us through your experience. A lot of times we forget about the dads and think, well, you're the man, you're the strong one, you'll be able to hold up, the family through this time. But you're going through your own experience, your own sadness, through this. But take us through yours.
Actually, for the men, it's like watching a 3D, because you get all the feeling from the mother to the newborn, from the doctor's information. As for me, it was a journey. We were at home on this particular day. I remember it was on a Sunday, and the sisters had come home, and everything was jovial. I went out to get a haircut, and when I'm there, my phone rings, and my wife tells me, "Come home." I wonder, I've just left home 5 minutes. Why should I come back? And I've been home. She tells me, "Come home now. My water has broke." So I leave the barber shop with the thing on. We rush to hospital. When we reach hospital, we take our files. The doctor goes through the files and says, "There's nothing we can do. The baby is not yet 25 weeks. It's very hard for the baby to survive. What we do, we must save the mother." And I say, "No, you can't do that. We must get a second opinion. So when the doctor came in and said, "No, let's try. We're a hospital. We'll try save the baby as much as we can. If the baby comes, well and good. I'll not operate on this lady so that she goes home with a scar and without a baby." So we stay in hospital the first day. The doctor who was checking on my wife before this happened comes in and says, "You're okay. I think you should go home for bed rest. Yeah, and when you hear labor pains, please just come to the hospital." And he leaves. So we are not discharged. We're anticipating a discharge on the 1st. The doctor who's doing rounds on the 1st comes in and says, "No, I must check why this happens." So she orders to do a sugar test. We do a sugar test. It takes long, around 3, 4, 5 hours, and we can't get discharged. Since it's a holiday, people come visit. And at around 7, my wife calls me and tells me I'm in labor pain. Even before we reach the labor ward, we branch into a private room and my wife gives birth. The baby came out crying. The baby is wrapped into thermal. We rush to the nursery, and that's when things start changing for me. They tell me, you need a neonatal doctor. Okay, who's a neonatal doctor? I don't know who's a neonatal doctor. Anyway, a neonatal doctor comes in, and I can't go into that room at that time. I'm locked outside. I remember, okay, now I have a wife to check on to. So I leave my sister there who was in hospital, rush to my wife. Coming back, my sister is crying. And she tells me she saw an incubator go in, and then an incubator came out, but the incubator was empty. And everything in the nursery went silent. Finally, the doctor comes out and says, guys, the baby is not very okay. The baby's weight is 560 grams. The baby has septic infection, jaundice is coming up, and there are 2 more infections that are coming up that she has to do tests on. So when the next day when we went to see the baby with my wife is when all hell broke loose, because we met the doctor and the doctor opened up and said, guys, look, 1, your baby has 3 infections plus jaundice. We are pumping this baby with so much fluids that we don't know if the baby can survive. And then my wife looks at me you didn't tell me all this. But as a man, you can't forge it out on your wife. Yeah. The nurses and the doctors were very encouraging. The baby was encouraging because she was fighting for her life. Yeah. I switch off everything that I have to do with my life. I don't go to work. I talk to my bosses. I switch off my phone. Now we start concentrating on the baby. We literally spent 12 hours a day in that hospital because we have to be there very early in the morning to give the morning milk. We have to be there at 10 when we're allowed to see her. We have to be there at lunchtime when she's getting the milk. We have to be there at 3 when they're giving her the feed. And we have to be there at night to give her the last portion. Premature babies have a chance of having a hole in the heart. And that can be the only way that these babies' heart rate is high. We used to sing for the baby, yeah, and pray for the baby, talk to the baby, communicate with the baby. That's when you knew there's a thin glass, but the distance is so far. You can't touch the baby. There's nothing you can do. All you can do is watch. As for a man, it's the most frustrating thing. It's not your money, it's not your ego, it's not your strength. All you can do is pray. Yeah. We used to pray for other babies in the nursery. Even if you go to the hospital, people think I'm a pastor by profession. Because when I get to the hospital, people come and tell me, please come, pray for a baby, pray for a baby. And I think it really helped us, yeah, for the growth. After staying around 58 days in hospital, we are around 1.8 kgs. We are seeing the door because at 2 kgs, we are out. Yeah. We have bills on our back. I don't know what will happen between these 2 days that I'll get around 1.8 million to pay because they won't release us. The ophthalmologist comes in and says, guys, now this is stage 3. I need to intervene. And I ask him, how do you want to intervene? I have to do now a real surgery on the eye and try and patch it up inside there because it's your choice. You can leave it and the baby can go home with one eye, or I can try and operate it. It's the second surgery in Africa to be done on a baby, and the first one wasn't successful. We went for the surgery, for the eye surgery. It took around 3 to 4 hours. The baby came out, and now we are on the healing process of the eye.
Richard, that is an experience and a half. And you mentioned something which, Ruby, you can also speak to. It's the whole stigma part of this, because as much as people could be congratulating you and saying, oh, great, you have a bundle of joy. And like Richard said, they have no clue what you're having to deal with. And you don't know whether you'll come through this. So, take us through that and what parents can do if they encounter a stigma like that.
The prematurity experience in itself is very difficult. With support and with good doctors, you're able to navigate through the whole process, yeah? But not everyone of our moms has that kind of support. So assuming you're walking around and somebody asks you, oh, you've been home for 6 months, you want to get out of the house and go to church, yeah? Or whatever. And somebody sees your baby. How old is your baby? 6 months. Really? Because that's the actual age, but really there could be 2 months or 3 months. So the baby still looks tiny, the baby is still really small. I wouldn't blame it so much that it's intentional. I think it's ignorance. People don't know about it, and that's why we are happy, Victoria, because you allowed us to come here and share our stories. It's just not to share, but to raise awareness on prematurity. We are all wearing our purple ribbons because 17th November is coming up and it's World Prematurity Day, and we get to talk about our experiences.
And just as we wrap up, you've kind of gotten over the hurdle, you feel we've made it. And then the experience of first holding the baby, that's something that you waited 2-3 months even before you had that experience. So just kind of take us through that. And then a message to another parent watching of a preemie, what you wish you knew back then and advice you'd give them now.
With especially taking care of, as Patrick said, a micro-preemie, the challenges are so wide, but all the same we thank God, and we have been very encouraged by the support we have gotten from friends, family. Both of us are working parents. I stayed away from work for 7 months. My employer took me back after those 7 months, and I left my child while he was still very fragile. But you see, people, as she says, don't understand. They'll ask you, oh, but your baby is big. He's 7 months. But when you remember what you've left at 7 months, you can't answer them. You learn to be very patient, very resilient, and you take all these things positively. And we pray that we will continue to create awareness in this country, especially for mothers who are even in areas where they can't even access good health care.
This journey is not only for these women. This journey is not only for the wives. Men, you should step up and be there for them. When the baby is at home, it's the best feeling. I'd also like to urge insurance companies, if they could find a clause and come and get insurance for terrorism, why can't there be a clause for preterm babies? Yeah. Financially, it is draining. Nobody plans for it. Yeah. It is draining. If something pops up like that, it could really isn't the burden on the parents, because not only in hospital, there is life after that, and it is expensive. The hospital visits are expensive. Victoria, while we are here, these are only people in Nairobi. There are other preterm babies in smaller hospital who make it or who don't make it. Yeah, outside Nairobi, there are preterm babies who literally don't make it just because of arrogance. It's a small thing, but because there's no knowledge, there's nobody trying to tell them what to do or what is the next step, kids don't make it.
This week on Victoria's Lounge Story Series, brought to you by Nivea, meet Aisha, a community health worker helping to save lives in her village of Kiwayu.
Kinukia watoto wangu nilisoma standard 1 mpaka 6 nikatoka. Kaja nyumbani, maisha magumu. Nikiolewa niko na miaka 17. Nikajifungua mtoto wa kwanza, nikajifungua nyumbani. Siku 3 kaumwa. Kajifungua, nilipojifungua moyo kabaki ndani ya matumbo. Hata mimi pia nilipoteza maisha yangu. Mimi nikiwaambia kwamba kuna faida kuzaliwa hospitali ni kwamba nimekiona kifo. Akina mama saa nyingine hupoteza maisha. Mama tajifungua, akijifungua kuna ile mui ile nyumba ya mtoto inabaki ndani ya matumbo pengine. Sasa ikikaa ile napandisha sumu kinyumbani, pengine unafukizwa madawa, sijui dawa za msituni, sijui nini, unapoteza maisha. Faida ya kuza hospitali, utahudumikiwa na utahakikishiwa ile mui imetolewa hapo hapo, hakuna athari yoyote, na ukiteremka hospitali utateremka safi. Wakina mama sasa mimi wananyenyekea na kuwapatia motisha. Nimeona ile faida ya hospitali. Sasa kuna mama wengine vichwa vyao vigumu. Mpaka sasa hivi kwa kina mama wanazaa majumbani. Kwa sababu hufikiria mimi naenda kuuza hospitali, tanizalisha ni shali ama tanizalisha ni njoroge. Lakini kuuza hospitali ni faida. Wewe ukionekana na matatizo yako kwamba unaumwa, mtoto anakuja alafu huna pumzi, tayari unasaidiwa na maji ya uchungu. Uko na pressure, umeshaambiwa wewe tarehe fulani wewe uje hospitali. Uje hospitali kubwa ufanye operation. Ufanye jeuri uzae nyumbani. Hakuna faida. Hujui kitu gani kitakufikia. Nakwambia faza watu walikuwa kitanda na boti. Wakipeleka hafiki faza unaregeshwa maiti. Naomba maiti yako. Lakini sasa imepungua zifo za kina mama, saa yote zimepungua zile zifo za mazazi. Sababu ni hospitali. Kwa maoni yangu, wamama Lamu anawekewa maleso, anawekewa mapepers. Taona wamama anamiminika kweli kwamba tunaenda kujifungua na tutapata faida ya mapepers, maleso.
Thank you so much, Richard, Ruby, Carol, and Rachel and Mukami. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories. And all the more reason to have this conversation to raise awareness. And Richard, you mentioned something really important, that so many other parents go through this outside of a major city and lose the child because of something that could be prevented. But they don't have the money, they don't have the resources, they don't have the knowledge. Very important things here. And I hope for those of you who are watching, if you are a parent of a preemie child, we'll actually put you in contact with Ruby, with the Preemie Love Foundation, so you can get the support that you need. If you are not, on World Prematurity Day, I ask you to reach out to a parent who has a preemie child. Support them, encourage them, and most importantly, count your blessings. Understand that you are a blessed person if you have a healthy child. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and I hope this is an encouragement to the many who are watching. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you to Sankara who hosted us today, such wonderful hosts, and I hope that we do this again next week. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.